Welcome to the Once a Cowboy, Always a Cowboy podcast, where you hear the history of Chaney football from the unique perspective of Coach Ron Berdis. All right, first question I'm going to ask you. 1989 season, you've been the head coach for 2 years, right? You've been on staff for a number. Since probably 1980-ish, somewhere in there.
78.
Okay, 78. So you've been on staff.
77, I'm
all
sorry.
Right. Been on staff for 10, 12 years. You've been there. You're now the head coach going into your third year. What, at this time, what are some of the lessons that you've learned as an assistant coach transitioning into the head coaching position? And followed up with that, looking back, hindsight, what do you still need to learn?
The biggest lesson that I think we learned, or I learned, in the first 3 years, and not to drop a cliche, but it really does take a village. I mean, I told you that I was in the mindset that I could odd X and O you. Okay, the experiences that I had would enable me to figure it out. But what I learned to be the case, and I think it was on the job training, and it was the benefit of what the guys that were working with me knew, okay, that they brought to the table, and that, hey, listen, we're not going to win because we shine up the car and have all these extras. We're going to win by blocking and tackling better and teaching fundamentals and getting our kids all on the same page. And that's what we sorted through. And I think once that started to come to fruition, that the wins started to come.
Yeah. So, year three, you're 3-17. Getting a lot of moral victories, which don't count, don't matter, right? But you see progress, okay? And so, what are you thinking going into year three, right? Your preparation, your expectations. Where's your mindset at going into year three?
Well, you got to understand that the people that love you and the people that are concerned about you, they're all telling you you're doing a great job. Just stick and stay, and it'll pay. Just hang in there. But then there's a faction, there's a group that's saying, hey, you're going to come in and do all these things, and you're going to win, and where are they? And that's the guy that or woman that pay their $4 for a ticket that entitles them to say whatever they want.
Right.
But there's a debt, not a debt, but there's an owance to those people, just like there is to the people that love you. I mean, they're fans. They're coming to support you, and they want a product. They want the results. So we got that, and we understood that, and we knew there were going to be naysayers. We just couldn't allow it to infiltrate into our program. Mm-hmm. And our kids were hanging solid, and that was what was key. Okay, the staff ultra supportive, the kids ultra supportive, and when you're not bringing home bacon every night to feed them, then, you know, like I told you down at Steubenville, they're looking at you with cow eyes and saying, what do we got to do? Okay. And besides, you know, gassing it up in the off season, going to more clinics, you know, talking to more coaches, meeting as a staff more frequently, and hashing some things out and getting in direction. You know, we had to do things to encourage the kids that this was about program, okay, and for program to succeed, okay, everybody's got to believe, okay, and that's we felt we were in that direction, that everybody was believing for the most part. There was some still some satellite moaners and complainers, but we'd talk about it. We openly would discuss that. We would discuss that with the kids and discuss that as a staff, and it would be, you know, those guys will rear their ugly head and they'll get rid of themselves, okay? Mm-hmm. You know, because they won't want to. The positive faction will force them out. We weren't looking to run anybody out. Okay, we always felt that, listen, I'll take that marginal kid, and our numbers never reflected this. Never had large numbers, but we weren't going to can that marginal kid. And I would tell my 9th grade and 8th grade staffs that, listen, you don't cut anybody. Okay, if you need me to go out and buy them equipment because you don't have enough, I'll do that. But you don't cut anybody. And it got to the point where our junior high, they were playing an A and a B team schedule, and there's no question that success there was paid dividends directly into our program.
So at this point, this was a question I was going to ask a little later, but at this point, do you have your feeder program set up at Volney yet? At the time, is I know when I was there, Bobby Joe Gessler was down there and was there for a number of years. Did you feel like you had what you needed set up down at the junior high, or were you still working on that?
Well, we had 2 guys at the junior high that were good guys. Their names escape me, but they were hanging on. Mm-hmm. Okay, mm-hmm. They were hanging on, and you know, and I met with them and I told them, listen, this is what I want you to do. This is what I expect out of you, which was in my job description. And I wanted them to scout, and sure. I wanted them to come to our meetings, and I wanted them to bring their kids to games, and they didn't sign up for all that. Okay, so eventually, I want to say after the first year, then we were able to pick our people. Gotcha. Gotcha. And then our people were on the same page. I mean, they were doing the things that we were doing, and you know, they were working the sidelines, the kids, and coming to games, and we were feeding them, and that as I said earlier, that started to pay huge dividends for us. The emphasis on that youth program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was definitely one of the strengths, was the integration of, and you see that, I think, as Ursuline and Mooney start getting better, the city starts changing, you know, recruiting your own kids.
Right. And I would go to Rock Ridge, and I would go to Kirkmere to the youth league games, mm-hmm. And if for no other reason, to be seen there.
Right.
Okay, to be seen there, to let them know that that I was interested. But I wasn't. We weren't calling kids or throwing T-shirts at them or anything.
Yeah.
Certainly we were accused of that. I was accused of, being on somebody's porch on the south side or whatever. But never did we make a phone call. And again with those numbers, maybe I should have made a few phone calls.
Well, me having known you and just your approach, I find it very difficult to believe that you're going to go and ask somebody to play for you, or
and a good case in point is when the stud back
there's a couple
that
of
went
them
to Ohio State.
Claret, Maurice Claret.
when Maurice Claret was at Fitch, he ran the kickoff back against. We won 45-7 or something.
Okay.
But he ran the kickoff, and the mother actually called.
Yeah.
And said, because he was supposed to come to Chaney. He was on my gym roster.
I got you. He was. I think the middle school at that time was Hillman. I believe.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so Hillman at that time, I got you. Yep.
Yeah, and she called and said, what are you gonna do for my son? And I said, I was really kind of shocked. I mean, I certainly knew who she was talking about. I said, what do you mean, what am I going to do? And she said, well, what are you going to do to get him to come? I said, I'll give him a helmet, shoulder pads, some gear. I said, what else can I give him? I give him an opportunity to play, if he's good enough. And that was the end of that, and so he went from Hillman to Fitch to Harding. There might have been another stop. I don't know. But
I don't think. I think he was on. I think he ended up getting hurt at Fitch, and then he was a ball boy on Harding's sideline.
Oh, okay.
And that was probably a miscalculation. by
He was impressive as they come. Boy, I'll tell you, I could remember taking kids up to in Southington a lifting meet.
I remember, yeah.
And he was an 8th grader at the time.
Yeah.
And was popping up on over 300 on the bench. And, he was really impressive.
Before we get into it, you were talking about, hey, what can kids get? Have you heard now that OHSAA is looking at voting on whether to make high school athletes able to get the NIL, name, image, likeness, to get sponsored? Yeah,
a couple guys that I played in high school with sent me a text about it and about the article. And it's that's just mind-boggling.
It is. You know what it makes me think about, though? It makes me think about Fernando DeChellis. You remember the old all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet on the corner of 224 and South Avenue, Shoney's?
Yes.
He could have been sponsored by them.
Yeah.
He could have hit the big time right there.
Yeah.
Missed out. So going into 89, who are some of the key players, the key names that you that are on that team that you're counting on?
Well, the big four at the time was Mac Gilchrist, Gary Bellish, Chris Samarone, and I just was looking up his name, and
Bernard Thomas.
Bernard Thomas.
Yeah.
And Now Bernard made big strides in our program because when he started with us, he was. I think you'll remember that I had a place down off the track with a big piece of plywood called the dog house.
Yes.
So if you took yourself out of a drill or weren't able to go, you'd have to sit in the dog house and watch your buddies run and you know. So Bernard got it. I mean, he's after a while he's like, you know, I'm not going to be a player here if I'm going to sit here and suck wind while the rest of my guys are out there working. I'm going to go, and he ended up being one of our key guys.
What were some of the strengths, weaknesses of that team? I think that from a staff perspective as well as from a player perspective. So, you know, you not only have to think about, okay, I got, you know, my players, I got to fix this, I got to fix that, but I got to mesh the staff together. Where do I need to fit myself in? Am I calling the offense? Am I calling the defense? Am I stepping back? What was kind of those strengths and weaknesses from both the player and staff aspect?
Yeah, well, the core of our staff at that time was Mike Popio, and you know that would have been his second year with us. Mm-hmm. You know, a Chaney guy, and started to lean because he deserved to be leaned on. Mm-hmm. Started to lean on him more. Okay. Trusting him with the defense totally, and,
right.
And you know, two young coaches that were with me for a while after that, and went on to become head coaches. At that time, Alan Mikovich and Bill Miller were on staff. And then, you know, Gessler was, the Gesslers were running the ninth grade.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, the eighth grade. And I had the Samarones coming in and working with the ninth grade. Mm-hmm. Along with Joe Colella, I think, was on staff then also. There was our core, and then, you know, the other support. But I'd say at that juncture, you know, Zielinski, Miller, Popio, and Mikovich they had demonstrated enough. They had demonstrated enough to be trusted completely, mm-hmm. And we were all in the same direction, on the same page.
Yeah, and so at this time, this is when Mike Dobrin, I think he goes to Poland with Shepis.
Yeah, right? Mike left us, and which was, you know, I mean, that kind of threw things out of kilter because, you know, Mike started it, you know, with us, and he was part of the plan, along with and your Uncle Red was still with us, but his capacity was waning as far as nuts and bolts of calling the offense and the defense, and coaching a position. Mm-hmm. He was more of a scout type of position. Come on meeting, you know, Sunday meetings and that type of thing, and you know, occasionally to practice. But yeah, this and the best thing they did, I think that gang that I'll always be indebted to. They kept my chin off the ground.
Yeah.
They were as encouraging as my family.
Well, I'll tell you what. This year, in '89, they need to keep your chin off the ground.
Yeah, that's a fact.
And not because of the 1-9 record, right? Because of how it ends up being a 1-9 season.
Yeah, you're right, but because of the 1-9 too, that was a factor. I mean, if anybody tells you that it's not a big deal, that 0-10 is as scary a thing as there is out there.
No, you're right.
And to get that win, to get that first win, when you're in a situation where, we could lose all 10, and we said that in the first 2 years. And then, when we start out year 3, even though we felt better about where we are, and you start losing by 2 points, you start losing by 3 points, and it becomes a trend, you're saying,
Well, I guess, and we can get into this, you're right. The 1-9 is 1-9. But when you're getting beat by 28, by 35, okay, maybe it's not meant to be, maybe we're just outclassed, those types of things. When you're losing by a field goal, or you're losing by, and you get this number right for me, how many games? You lost, 5 games?
5 games by 13 points.
By a total of 13 points. Then it's like, well, what call didn't I make? Or what adjustment didn't I make? Then I think for me it becomes almost more to internalize. There's a lot of opportunities you have to maybe make a difference in a game, and I think that even makes it harder.
Yeah, and I think if you went through the archives and you went back and as I analyze in my own mind, there's a couple ways you can go there after those kind of losses. You could say, yeah, we're close, but no cigar. Or as you referred to, are we missing some things here? Are we missing some of the little things? And that's what I would keep bringing up to the staff. Is there something more that we can be doing? We go self scout and whatnot, and we try to correct them. And again, we were still, I think, in the learning phase of learning how to win, and saying, okay, well, you know what? In '87, we were doing things, and then in '88, we were doing some things better than we were in '87, and then in '89, well, we're doing some things better than we did in '88, and we were on pace. So that kind of kept us grounded.
Yeah. So, a couple notes that I have talking about the City Series. At this time, it's Chaney, South, East, Rand, Wilson still. You have 41 players going through the West Side Saga there. So kind of the typical numbers that we see moving on throughout your tenure. You stay at that 35 to 45. We talked about some of those all-city guys. And you start the season once again with your rival, Fitch. Do you have any memories of that game? 44 to 13. Fitch is rolling at that point. Very, very staunch program.
Who was their gun then? Is it, Leo Hawkins, maybe?
Could have been. Not sure. Not totally sure.
I vaguely I remember the loss. You remember those. Dave had the wing tee going, and they were, Fitch was a tough, hard-nosed, well-coached football team,
right?
And
you never go in expecting 44-13.
No, you don't. No, we thought we'd be more competitive,
right? But you knew you'd have to play well,
yes,
to go get them.
Yes.
So then you go to Camel, and you lose to Camel 14-0.
That's when they were as good as they've been under Eddie Rossum, and they might have played for a state championship right around there. If it wasn't that year, I don't know.
Yeah, they were a very good football team.
Sean Patton was there. And,
yep, and their baseball program in that late 80s, early 90s basketball just had it going. Very good. So that's a 14-0 loss. Week 3, you go to Bill Bourne, and you lose 14-12.
Yeah, really key that we went there and played better than we did in the first 2 weeks, obviously, and we did. I mean, in a position to win it, and just came up short.
Yeah, and so just some of the notes that I took from this game. So up until this point, the 3 teams that you've lost to are 8-1.
Yeah.
That's as you talk about your first 3 games, historically have always been, pretty tough.
Yeah.
Meat grinder. You're quoted in the Vindicator as saying, "Our kids played well enough to win. I'm not making excuses. I'm real proud of our kids, and we're beginning to take shape."
Yeah, absolutely felt that. Like I said, coming out of the first 2 weeks, two really good football teams, and going to play another good football team, Division I, and knowing that this meat grinder to start the year with, and for our kids to have a chance to win and be as competitive as they were, we felt that's what we were selling.
Yeah, and down the stretch, one of the pieces from the article was there was an interception on 3rd and goal to end the come from behind victory. So even at the end, there's an opportunity for you guys to pull it out. And
yeah, and I remember the scenario vividly, and I actually think that game's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy Lapata was the quarterback, and Mac was grinding out some gains for us, and for the go-ahead score, and there was a timeout. We were on I want to say 8, and I told Jimmy, I said, and I just saw him over Christmas break, and we were talking about this. I said, listen, if you don't have anybody wired, throw the ball to me, or throw it to the band, or throw it somewhere, but don't throw it to the enemy. Well, it was a 3-step drop, real quick throw. He went 1, 2, 3, threw it right to the linebacker, and what put us in that situation, I went to our kicker and said, prior to that, I said, could you make it? And it was a mess to an extra point. And he looked me dead in the eye and said no. and I believed him. But we were going to try it anyway, because Jimmy, the interception was on 3rd down. So
can you make it?
And he said no. But
well, it gives you an opportunity to, take a shot and get it in.
Yeah.
Couple names from the Vindicator that were mentioned. Aubrey Dawson had a 26-yard TD reception.
Yeah, Aubrey really started to emerge as a big-time player for us.
What position did he play?
He was a wide-out defensive back.
Okay.
As a wide-out, it wasn't like he was I mean, what he was getting, he was catching, but, you know, we weren't filling the air up with footballs. I mean,
yeah. So this was a time where even your wide receivers were in a 3-point stance.
Yeah.
When did that change?
They better be able to stop.
Yeah. When did that change? That'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some of I think I've watched this film on YouTube, and that's what I remember. Maybe even in the 90s, early 90s, they were still in 3-point stances. That's just funny how, you know, the X's and O's change.
I think I was still in a mindset in 89 telling our defensive backs, listen, I never met a wide out this comes from years of being a secondary coach. I never met a wideout that had a bit of courage. I said, so if a wideout is stock blocking you, then you're not doing your job. But that kind of Anthony Floyd certainly dispelled that.
Yeah, right. There's a couple of them, right?
Yeah.
Lapata goes 10 of 18 for 153. Gilchrist is
which was a good day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why we took the shot. It wasn't like, hey, you know, we're going to roll the dice here. I mean,
right.
You know, he was having a good day.
Yeah. Gilchrist 13 carries for 70 yards, and Bourne is quoted as saying, "It's a real shame this team had to come up like this." Talking about the Cowboys, tough schedule. But the good news is that Chaney is improving and has played well in all 3 losses. So there's the old pat on the back that Red Angelo is talking about, right? You know, and you're a good guy, just hang in there. I'm sure he meant it, but
there's no question,
right?
That Bill was sincere, and I appreciated it, and it was paid back. In the following year, I believe, you know, we were handling them pretty good. And we had an opportunity to just walk in at the end. I mean, we were down around the 3, and we, with 2 minutes to go, and we just took a knee 3 times. You know,
So, you know, things are coming along. It seems like you're getting a little momentum. You go into play South the next week on a Thursday night. You win that game 21-0.
Yeah. You couple that with the Boardman, you know, near win, close loss. And we think, okay, you know, we're really turning a corner here.
Yeah. And
but we know we got some serious schedule.
Right. And your quote is saying, "Hey, we're just glad to get a win."
It's got that monkey off our back.
Ron Domesco, who was the head coach for South, says, "I thought our kids played well. Chaney came up with some big plays, and we didn't, and that was the difference in the game." And Domesco, he was there for a while. Was he there when Stoops was there? Did he take over? I guess maybe just talk a minute about Ron Domesco.
Yeah, he took over for Stoops. Yes, and he had pretty good success there. You know, he did a good job. I have nothing but a lot of respect for Ron, and he was a good football coach, and we were glad to get that win.
Tamron Smith, he would have been there at that time.
Yeah. Because
I think in '90 I saw a video where they beat Boardman, and Tamron Smith puts on a show, and it's, you've gone up against some really local, talented guys that have gone on and had some success at the next level.
Yeah, and that's a tribute to the kids' belief. I mean, they kept, keep believing, and they certainly did that.
So the following week, you go to play Ursuline, and Coach Angle, you lose that game 21-0. Kevin Ellerby, tailback, goes for 21 carries, 136 yards. It seems like it's been, you kind of get some things going, and then boom, you come up against the.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate of how that schedule was. You're right. You get that a little bit of momentum going, and then you run into. I'm sure they were a playoff team, it was a setback. It was no question a setback. But the kids were hanging tough.
Yeah. The following week, next up, you're back into the City Series. You're playing Rayan and John Turco. You lose that game 20-18.
Yeah, that's the game with the phantom illness at the end of the game. We should have never been in the position for that to occur, because we had the lead, and we punted, and they were deep in their own territory, and we were playing real well defensively. And of all people, our best defensive back, Mac Gilchrist, Powell got behind him, and they hit a 50-yard pass, put him down in there in scoring position. But we were hanging tough defensively even then, and they got an extra playoff at the end of the game.
Can you talk about that real quick?
The clock was running out. They were out of timeouts, and they were on the 2 or 3 yard line, and they ran a play. We stuffed them, and there was not enough time to huddle, get a play from the sideline or whatever, or even gather up and run a quarterback sneak or whatever.
Right.
But as soon as that play stopped them, it was like I said, 12 seconds with the clock running. A kid was standing in the end zone and just went down right in front of the official, like he was dogging the official, and then like somebody hit him with a tranquilizer.
Sniper
fire. Yeah. And they stopped the clock. Turk got a play in, got the kid off, and they ran it in,
and that's where Turco made the statement.
He'd rather be lucky than good. And as I said, I remember, because the guy that stopped the clock was actually a Chaney guy, and they. I think it was understood. It was discussed at the rules interpretation meeting that week that the protocol on that is, in that situation when it's obvious that somebody's trying to hoodwink you, that the official should, the first concern's got to be the athlete. There's no question.
Sure.
But the official should say to the kid, "Are you okay?" without chopping the clock. Are you okay? But if he's, obviously unconscious or something, then, he so I don't know what went on as far as that was concerned, but the kid went down. There was obviously nothing wrong with him. He bounced up, and but we should have never been in that position.
Right. And I think that goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning. Okay, you said, hey, are we missing something? At the end of the day, the only thing you can control are you and your kids and your decisions. And I think, that's a high character thing.
And not to interrupt you, but that Rain team was probably the best team in the city. That was chock full of talent. They had the stud fullback.
Would that be Lamont Finley? There was I think he rushed for a couple touchdowns. That was a name. Craig Powell goes on to Ohio State, plays for the Browns. Pat Humphreys, Michigan State. That's some real talent.
Yeah. And like I said, it wasn't Finley. Finley was, I think, their tailback, but they had a big fullback that went to Pitt. I'm pretty sure. That was. I'll bet they were city champs that year.
Yeah.
And we come out of there saying, you know what? We let that one get away. We let it get away. I mean, it was us. It wasn't they beat you. We let it get away.
So right now you're going into East. You're sitting at 1-5. Okay. You got East, Wilson, Steubenville, and Mooney left. So you're probably thinking, hey, we at least got a shot at the next two, and then we'll see what happens from there. You play East, and Regal Reese hits a field goal for the only points of the game, and East wins 3-0.
Yeah, that's what I remember about the game. I'm fairly confident that we felt we were a better football team than them going in. Okay, and for us to lose in that fashion, and I could maybe guess that Mac might have been down with some injuries or something. I don't know, but I think at that point people were loading up the line of scrimmage, and we weren't. Even though we had a decent game against Boardman throwing it, we weren't doing it all that much.
Yeah, and so you go into the next week. You're playing a Wilson team. Is John Kopp still the coach?
Yeah, John was the assistant, or was the head coach then.
Okay, and he was an assistant at Chaney when Ed was head coach with you. And so the reason I say that says DeMond Taylor's in for Gilchrist.
Okay.
So what you're saying about maybe Mac was kind of hurt, maybe there was he was banged up for.
Yeah. DeMond Taylor was a good back. I mean he was a 1-2 punch for us. In 90 in 90.
Yeah. And it says LaPata, he was out for that game or came in late. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I actually think that he was ineligible. And I couldn't tell you how that occurred because we tried to stay on top of all that, and we did our own progress reports, and for some reason that slipped through the cracks, but yeah, my guess would be that maybe we would have played. Either Sam Martucci under center or Matt Vasco, and neither one of them had much experience there.
Yeah, I think you're quoted saying that you had to. Might have been Vasco that got the majority of practice, and then this worked itself out, and LaPata ended up coming back in. But there again, it's one step forward, two step backs.
Yeah.
So, interesting little stat here. In the Vindy, they say it's been 4 full decades since Wilson has won 4 in a row. And so they pull out a victory, 10-6. And you just seems like the like I said at the beginning, keeping your chin up. It just seems like you're right there at the cusp. You're there to make the turn, and for whatever reason, it's not happening.
Yeah, Wilson had pretty good running quarterback that was all city and had a big day. But they were, John had them playing.
Mm-hmm.
They were winning some games.
Yeah. Last two games of the season, you have Steubenville and you have Mooney. You go down to Steubenville and you lose 15-13. Why do you think? No offense, you're losing to Wilson, you're losing to East, you're right nip tucking all these games, and then you go to the year before, number 2 in the state, nip tuck, play Steubenville again, nip tuck. Why do you think you played Steubenville so well?
Well, because I think that's a heck of an atmosphere down there, as you know. And I think that our kids rose to the occasion. I mean, I think that, you dodged the 0-10 season. So,
right.
So you got that going for you. And then you're playing tough, and you go down there and you see all this pomp and atmosphere that just
it
reeks football. I mean, it just brings out the football player in everybody. I mean, as a coach and as a player, it just guns you up, and it's packed. You're playing in front of a lot of people now. And our kids just went there and performed. I mean, I think and really had a chance to win it. I mean, and that team, state runner-up maybe, and
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's year after year. Then 2 years from there, you go play them in the playoffs, and once again, you see them there. Did they have the fire-breathing horse at that time?
They did, and nothing was different than the stands being
yes,
3 yards behind you. I mean, the people are right on top of your sideline.
Yeah.
It was. It's really something down there. But again, a tribute to our kids hanging in there, keeping their chin up, and still believing. Okay, going into Steubenville, 1-7, believing they can win.
Yeah, right. And then so you end the year once again with Mooney, and you drop that game 22-7.
Yeah, I we talked earlier about moral victories, and I think we were excited that we got in, and I know we were pressing to get in towards the end of the game again, to make it 21-14, but they were every bit as good as Steubenville.
But this is where you feel like, okay, we got it now. We're right there. If we can make a couple tweaks, I guess you as the head coach, you always have to give that presentation. Your coaching staff, you got to give it to your boosters. You got to give it to your parents. You got to give it to your players. In your heart of hearts, you believe in that, or is there some doubt?
No, I absolutely believe that. Operating under the principle, you get better, you get worse, you never stay the same. We got better in 88, we got better in 89, and we expected to get better in 90.
So what did you think you needed to do to turn that corner? Because right? The cliche is there had to be some specifics in your head. If I do this, this will get us over, right? What do you think you specifically needed to get over that hump? From 1-9, the next year you win the city title. You're 5-5. What was it that you needed to do?
Keep the pressure on. Keep the pressure on as far as that investment. Make that investment so huge, so large, so inviting that there's no surrender. So ramp up the off season. We're going to do more things together. We're going to work harder in the weight room. We're going to work harder at conditioning, and we're not going to those close ones will turn into wins. We knew that we had a lot of the successful players that were putting us in a position to be successful were back. Okay. And I think we were better up front. Mac was going to be a senior. There was a big giant question mark under center, but we ended up picking going with a program guy that believed and wasn't going to lose it for you. We're never going to ask him to win it for us.
You're talking about the quarterback position.
Yeah. And I'll talk about him when we get into 90. Wasn't going to lose it for you, but knowing that, well, you know what, we're not going to ask him to make a throw to win the game. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we would prepare for that, but we just knew what the capabilities were.
Right.
But Mac was going to be a senior, and we had DeMond Taylor, and we had a young lad named Sylvester Patton who became who entered into the scene.
So you said we're going to put the pressure on, we're going to do it in the off season, and those close ones are going to come in. You know, those close losses are going to turn into wins. So the other thing that you have to is that step one. What are you thinking about with Fitch? Because I think that's another animal, right? That's a whole nother animal. That what do we have to do to get those types of teams?
Yeah.
Or are you just saying let's take step one and then we'll deal with step two next?
Yeah. What we couldn't control. We couldn't control the schedule. I mean, we could yip about it, and I'm not telling you that we didn't. You know, naturally, I was going ahead and saying, you know, we got to get rid of some of these games. We just, I mean, starting division, and we did. I think we got rid of Ursuline after that year. And not Mooney though. But anyway, we couldn't control schedule, but we could control mindset and approach and preparation. And so that was our intention. As I started to say, the city was our would have been the first phase. Let's get this.
Right.
Let's get the league. Let's become the masters of our league, and then we'll worry about the outlying opponents.
Okay. So you gave a stat there a couple weeks back, talking about in the 80s won 5 games in 8 years. I mean, it struggled for a while. Okay, you're struggling, and I just think about like today's dynamic. today's society, today's culture. Were you getting any pressure at that time? So it's 3 full years. You're implementing your program. You mentioned at the start of this conversation, you're not seeing the fruits of the labor to the layman, maybe, right? To the average casual fan, to mom and dad. Are you getting any heat?
No, actually not. The parents appreciated what we were doing for the total kid,
Mm-hmm.
and so did the faculty. Okay, so we had the support of the parents. We had the support of the faculty. The administration was extremely positive, and the key, as far as those outlying factors are concerned, Red. I would go to Red and what do you think? And hey, you're on track. Hang in there. That's what he'd hang in there. Okay. So parents, faculty, administration, Red, but knowing full well the kids absolutely believed.
Yeah.
And I, as I say that, I have this visual. Do you remember when the old weight room was in the shop?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I could remember Matt Vasco and George Wallison holding the ladder while I hung up a Nike banner that says "Just Do It."
Yeah.
In the weight room, and that was in the off season, preparing for 90, and there was just an aura of excitement. I mean, saying, okay, we were 1-9 last year. That was then. This is now, and let's go ahead, full speed ahead.
Yeah, and so, Ed's the athletic director, and you kind of hit on what that question was. Just the administration was supportive, and I think for me, when I had the opportunity to coach for you, that was probably what was so impressive to me, and not, Ursuline was very similar. The pillars, meaning just the total program, right? The off-season commitment, the volunteering, going to the nursing homes in the holidays, the study table, the focus on academics. And that was going to be my question about how did the administration and teaching staff feel about it, because I know that you always kind of handled you were a go-to guy if there was an issue in class and those types of things. So you kind of answered that with how you were received and appreciated by the school community.
Yeah. It was the faculty was, as I said, very, very, very supportive, and Alex Murphy and then Bill Terleski were the principals involved, and I was still getting some game night help from Joe Lutzy, who was downtown, and he would be on the phones game night with me and kind of keeping me at an even keel sometime. But
during the game,
which was
that's a full-time
job.
Yeah. One question I had, last one. So, and objectively, after 3 years, reflecting back, okay, knowing this story gets better, right? It's been a rough story so far. Knowing this story gets better, how do you grade yourself so far? So if you had to grade yourself on just what you took over, where you're at, not you in that moment, but Ron now, how would you grade yourself on the progression of yourself in the program so far?
C minus, D. It would be completely remiss if I did not say that we were still learning. Okay, we were still learning. We were getting it. It was becoming more obvious, apparent to us, but still in the learning process. And I think that if you ever get to a point as a coach, because it's an evolving piece of work, if you ever get to the point where you're not growing, then it's time to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the staff meshing, with the players meshing, the off season, everything was coming into play, but there was never a time that we met as a staff or that I talked to the team that I didn't have the mindset of we could do more.
Right. All right. The next time that we talk, things get better, right? You start looking at winning city titles and start making some progress, and things start up and to the right, start getting better.
Right. And 90 was an really excitable time for us. And I could say this, and maybe this will be a good lead-in. In 90, did we think we'd be playoff bound in 91? Probably not. And I 90s when you started to see the players' improvement become obvious.
Yeah.
91 is when we had a collection of really good players.
Yeah.
That came through the program. And that's a 5-year deal, a 4-year deal. So the success that the 91 team had and the 90 team had, they had as 8th graders and 9th graders.
So you see that coming up.
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of see where you're at. I think the hardest thing, sitting back and looking from a, 20, 30-year lens, 87, 88, 89, how hard you asked those guys to work. And you mentioned it a couple times ago, but then you see the next 4, 5, 6 years, the amazing run that transpires, the playoffs, the city championships, all those things. It almost hurts for those 87, 88, 89 guys.
It does, but I think that all those guys, and I've talked over the years with those guys, look at themselves as Spartans.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do. That they went through the mental and physical chores of improvement, and I think that is that reflects very positively for them, and that they could look back and say, and I told you this the last time, that Chris Samron said in an interview that I said, we didn't have much success, but we know that we set the tone for the future, okay, for the future successes that were about to occur. And, that's a real testimony to the kids via Red, hanging in there and believing.
Yeah. Well, it's I'm looking forward to kind of talking about that and just the progression of it. So it'll be interesting to see how your perspective is moving through the next, the successful aspect of Chaney football.